Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this month's CV and Caffeine. So if you are joining us today and this is your first CV and Caffeine, we are here to talk about a particular part of the career visioning process and drink some caffeine. So grab your favorite caffeinated beverage. No, I do not drink coffee. And no, if you ever see me drinking this can on a webinar, it is not a Truly, as somebody asked me this week. It is a sparkling ice. It is my choice of caffeinated beverage. I just can't do hot, dirty bean water. It doesn't happen for me. Sorry for those of you that deeply love your coffee. But we are here to have a casual conversation and a little bit of fun talking about career visioning and answering any of the questions that you might have. So if you have questions as an attendee of this webinar, please feel free to go ahead and put them in the chat. We will do our best to answer them and to get back to you as we go through. And in the meantime, I will introduce you to our two lovely panelists today, KW Talent members that we have, who are CV whizzes who have learned a lot, know a lot, and probably learned a couple of things the hard way, and to learn a little bit about them. So Joseph, we will start with you. Tell us a little bit about you, where you're from, who you are, what you do, and then I will move on to Margaret.
Love it. Thank you, Liz. My name is Joseph Klosik. I'm an operating principal housed in Charleston, South Carolina. We have two market centers here, as well as a third market center in Charlotte. My wife and I also have a small team that we operate here in Charleston. And yeah, so I love this process. We have a leadership team. I've got 14 leaders on my team right now. And then obviously the organization that comes with that in the market centers. We have about 515 agents in the entire ecosystem there.
Awesome. Very nice. Margaret, how about you? Tell us a little bit about you.
So my name is Margaret Bzdewka. I work on Long Island in the New York area. I'm right smack in the middle of the island, so I can do east or west. I'm licensed 28 years, 10 years with Keller Williams. I am the ALC Tech Chair, so I'm a big command user, and that's what my team uses. Now I have a small team. I have a part-time virtual admin and 2 agents. At one point, I did have 8 members on my team. So we grow and shrink.
All right. That is not uncommon, especially in a shift. And sometimes in a shift, that's the right answer to do. Lean and mean will frequently get you further than big and bulky. All right. Fantastic. So today's topic we're going to talk about for CV and Caffeine is actually about the motivational interview. Now, as a coach, as somebody who has studied the CV process inside out and done tons of KPAs and talked to people, it's interesting when we start getting to the motivational interview, because what I find is like a lot of rainmakers get, I don't know, uncomfortable when it comes to life story and motivational interview. And sometimes I think that's because they're trying to rush the process. They're like, oh, well, I validated the KPA. I'm in pain. I need to hire somebody. I don't want to do the mushy gushy. I just, they need to be motivated on their own. And sometimes I think it's just a discomfort of it is further in the process. So not every candidate actually gets there, right? And so if not every candidate actually gets to that point in the process, that means we don't have as much practice at it. So I want to ask you guys, and Joseph, we'll start with you, is tell me about, you had it when we were talking before we went live here, you had an interesting story about how you've kind of grown into a comfort level with the motivational interview in particular and that end of process of CV. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I did a lot of these early on. I before Cyberbacker was big and yet VAs were coming on, I dug into really doing a lot of interviews virtually and did a lot of KPAs with it. And I found in that when I get to the motivational interview side of it, I tended to pull back. Right. And for me, it was, am I real comfortable with the silence? Right. There's, that asks the question, tell me more about that. What else? What's important to you about that? And sometimes I'd get awkward and I didn't do it. And honestly, a turning point for me was when I was being taken through the process again by my regional director, Mark Brenneman, for my role as EOP. And I remember my experience in that motivational interview. It was such a comfortable conversation. And Mark and I had known each other for years, but he's the RD. That personality was just, we'd never really kind of gotten deep on that. So to experience that, I realized how important that was because it really got him to learn about me, vice versa. And so moving forward, I really leaned into it and it was not natural, right? I mean, for me, it just kind of was like, oh my gosh, I got to be quiet a little bit longer than I feel like it. So, but it was life changing because as it relates to this process, because it really does just get you into a better relationship so you can lead that person better should you get into business with them. But then also just shows you the patterns of what they're looking for and what you can expect, growing a business with them.
It's interesting, like when you look at that on the receiving side of it, when someone actually does your motivational interview. So to all of you watching, first things first, if you've never actually had your KPA validated, you've never gone through the CV process, which I find as rainmakers frequently, we've actually never sat on the receiving side of it, right? Like
Right.
even if you're in a market center, the market center is typically going to do maybe a short abbreviated process with you. If you've never sat on the opposite side of it, find yourself a buddy, find yourself one of your peers in KW Talent, find yourself somebody in your team and go through it and practice. Because to be on the receiving side of it, like Joseph said, you see it from a whole different point of view. And it's really interesting to be on the receiving side of it because what you realize during that process is, like, even as Joseph said, like him and Mark had known each other for years at that point. But all of a sudden, there's a bond and clarity of understanding somebody as you move through the motivational interview and the life story. You see people differently, even people you know and you know well. You're going to see differently after that because they open the door to all of those little things that make them tick in that, right? They show you all of those things. And I think that's really important when we're interviewing a candidate because if we don't know what makes the candidate tick, how do we actually know if we can lead them and what motivates them? They might show up and say they're motivated. So does every brand new licensee that wants to make $100,000 their first year, right? They all say they're motivated, but what are they actually motivated towards? Like what actually is driving them? Margaret, tell us about your experience a little bit in the motivational interview and kind of your journey going through this.
So mine is a little bit different. Every person I have added to my team, most have been past clients or a referral from my team member. So I feel like it's somebody I kind of know. In hindsight, I think I should have stayed the course with the questions better because I felt like I could answer the questions without talking to them. And I know that's the wrong answer. Because
And then what lessons did we learn from that, Margaret?
well, and it's funny because like my last hire, she was a client of mine 8 years ago. I stayed in touch the whole time. So when she contacted me and wanted to get her license and to automatically join my team because she saw that, I had it together, I was successful, we were able to, get business done. What I was looking for was a showing assistant match. And I went through the questions and stuff, and she's motivated. She had a service position with a bank for 15 years, so she was very good on the phones. So we eliminated the showing assistant match, and she automatically went to be a buyer's agent. And through the process, I found out that that wasn't the exact match for her. And you could see her excitement going to a little bit more pain because the conversion wasn't as easy. So as a team leader, I think you have to advance people as they prove themselves and make sure you have a fit in the beginning and to go through all the questions because obviously I wasn't able to validate her stresses when she first came on. I had to watch it happen and then you're trying to put a Band-Aid on it.
Yeah. It's hard when you try to fit a square peg into a round hole, as famous line from the Holiday movie, if anybody has seen it. It just doesn't work, right? Like square peg, round hole just does not work. We've got to get people where their strength zones are and what that's going to fit. And in order to guide them through truly, like as you mentioned, the stressful times, what actually behind the scenes is motivating them there so that if it's just, this is stressful for me because it's new. I mean, we all do lots of stressful things every day, right? But it's like, is this just stressful because it's new to me and I'm growing that muscle, right? I'm flexing. Or is this stressful for me because I viscerally dislike it, right? Like those are two very different things. If I'm motivated and you as my leader know what makes me tick and what my goals are and what I'm working towards and what I want out of this job, you can guide me through stressful things, even when I might want to crack, right? Like, and that's important to guide through, to bring it back to the motivation, to remind somebody of, this is why I'm doing this. This is why I'm doing this, because I can get through this, right? We can get people through stressful times. But to Margaret's point, if it's something that viscerally does not mix with who they are as a person, y'all, you cannot force somebody into that kind of torture, no matter how motivated they are. Eventually, they will become irrational, irate, unhappy, miserable people. And it's not getting them closer to their goal. They're just miserable at that point. And I don't know if you've ever had a miserable person work for you, right? Someone who's truly in the wrong role that's just like, this is horrible. They're not giving good customer service. They're not doing a good job. They're not people you want talking to your clients. And it's not that they're bad people. It's just that they're so wrongly placed in a role that it's keeping them farther and farther and farther actually away from the things they want, because now they're unhappy, and unhappy people don't do a good job at all. I want to answer a question that was in here. Michelle asked, how long should a CV process take? You know, Michelle, for the entire process, if you're really pushing it and you're really diligent about what you're doing, you could probably get it done in about 2 weeks. The challenge is that when you cram it into a short period of time, you're kind of rushing through parts of the process, and you're less likely to see some of the cracks when you're rushing. You might accomplish all the steps, but you're not going to sit in it and have the reflection time and the growth time that you might if you extend the process. I would really recommend, it should take about a month to go through the CV process with somebody, 3 to 4 weeks, right? And that actually allows cracks to expose as well. And you want to do that. One of the important things, though, is to alert them of what the timeline is going to look like. I see Joseph shaking his head. He's like, yeah, that's when we don't give people the right expectations, like we're just setting it up for failure.
100%. That's what I was going to say. We've gotten that feedback a lot. We got it actually from a team leader that we recently hired. And she's like, I'll be honest, I thought at one point maybe I was just being strung along. You guys just wanted to tell me it wasn't the case. And that was a huge aha to make sure when we go back in the beginning and setting that expectation.
I recently heard something in a book. It was a statistic that says it typically takes people to hear something 7 times before they actually absorb it and believe it. And I think a lot of times as rainmakers and goers, right? Like we're assertive, we're responsive, we're intense, like we're just moving like train wrecks through this China shop, right? That we tell somebody something once, even if we set the expectation, right? At the beginning, we're like, hey, this is a long process. This could be 3 to 4 weeks. We forget to tell them again and to remind them at every step of the process. Just so you know, this is where you're at in the process. We're very excited to keep talking to you about a candidate. Just so you know as well, this is about the estimated timeline we have left and next steps. Because we might have told them in the beginning, but I bet if we actually told somebody, especially if they're from outside of the KW world or any kind of a world that does a process like this, a thorough interview, if we tell them the interview process is 3 to 4 weeks, they're probably like, no, it's not. Like maybe it's 3 to 4 weeks from when you interview me at first to when I actually start, but they're not going to think that the interview process is actually what it is for us. And the second question on there, and I want to get both of your opinions on this as well, that Michelle had, is with that, how many people should be involved in the career visioning process? She asked, should one person do each step? What should that look like? So I'll share my opinion after you guys. I'd like to know how you handle the career visioning process in your business and the way you run it with that. What do you believe about bringing other people in the process?
Margaret, go ahead.
So for me, my best hire was an executive full-time admin, and we went through all the steps. She was a perfect match. And then I had her meet my team members, so they could get to meet her. And at that point, it was 3 agents on my team, and everybody had a favorable response. So I think that's very important, because when your team or your market center, wherever you're doing the hire for, buys into the person, they feel like they have a say in grooming them and growing with them, rather than this was a decision that the leader made and, it's something we have to deal with. I think the buy-in is very important.
Group interview process, absolutely. Joseph, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's going to be situationally specific, but I would say, my 90% of the time answer would be whoever the person is going to be directly in relationship with them, either their direct report or whoever it is, that should be the person leading it. I don't think you personally, I've not seen success where you have one person do one part, one person do another. I've even had hard success of trying to do it like my wife and I, when we've hired someone for our team, we've done it together. it works, but you then have to do it each time. And then you also have like two chiefs wanting to get in a situation. It's like they don't know who they're supposed to be. It's kind of a pressure cooker. So you got to be careful on that. But I 100% agree with Margaret, though, is the group interview. I mean, that's what that's for. It's like, you get the buy-in for the team at that point. But I think separating it out, I think that would be a challenge, particularly with most leadership roles.
I agree. I think it's really complicated. The group interview, 100%. We want to bring in the team members that will be directly working with that. In a small team, you could bring in really the whole team, right? Because it's going to happen. In a big team, like you've got 20 people on the team, don't put this person in a firing squad of 20 people, right? You bring in the immediate people that they'll be communicating with, working closely with, and reporting to at that point in time. One of the challenges with bringing in multiple people, right, as Joseph said, is it's like, who's the boss? Who am I building the connection with? It feels kind of disjointed. However, let's imagine I'm the rainmaker and I've got my EA, and my EA is making their first hire. Okay. And this is very real life scenario. And my EA has only been with me a year. They might not even have attended career visioning yet because it just hadn't come around yet. And we found ourselves growing and needing this position. Like, you're kind of in a rock and a hard place. One, I would hope you would use and lean back on all the KW Talent digital tools to help get that person up to speed, even if they've not attended career visioning. However, if you're not, or they still are just a little green in that area, we would want to do that process together, right? But there's a lot of back end work because ultimately I want the EA to be taking the lead, even if I'm there, right? Guiding them through that process. This is the EA's role to own. That means that while I might be present in the process, and I may do a significant amount of the process in my presence, the EA should be the one scheduling the appointments, doing all the follow-up, introing, setting expectations, right? They should be able to take the command of that where they can. So that way the candidate understands the relationship that the EA is ultimately their boss and the person that they are actually interviewing with, even if I'm there to guide through process. And I see frequently that actually gets broken where we're just like, hey, the EA is not fully trained on it yet and they can't handle it. So I'm going to hire the TC. Well, then the TC always thinks I'm their boss, and that's not the way we want leverage to work, right?
I think that's a really, really good point. And where my mind went with in market center leadership, a lot of times you have the TLs are the ones that are always doing KPAs, and you don't have a lot of changes, growth, and shrinking in market centers as you would necessarily in a team. And that happens all the time, right? An MCA or an agent services person wants to bring someone on, and the TL's like, well, I'll just do it. I love just the clarity of no, empower them to do it, walk them through it, but just set it up ahead of time that the TL's present. And in that role, I love that idea.
Yeah, look, my shirt says it, Chief Empowerment Officer, right?
Right.
But that's it, right? That's how it's the I do it, we do it, they do it, right? So even if they've not been to CV, they can still own a significant amount of that process while they shadow you, while you might guide through the KPA process. They own the entire rest of it around there. And I think that's really important. I don't love to break up multiple people into a CV process. I really don't. I think, and Laura posted it in the chat there, if anyone sees it, like they divided the CV process amongst multiple people, and it's a mess because it turns into who is my boss? Who am I interviewing with? What am I doing? In a pinch, if you have to fill somebody in, like someone goes on vacation for 3 weeks, I get it. This is real life. We're small businesses. It happens. And it should not be the standard process or idea. Once the KPA is validated, in my opinion, they should live with the person that validated the KPA the whole way. Everything kind of before KPA validation, I think we can have administrative staff, operational side handle, but they should be interviewing with their direct supervisor for the rest of it, right? Like the person that they report to for the rest of the process. Now we got 10 minutes left. Here's the next question I want to ask. So let's move actually on from the career visioning hiring part of this. Let's get back to the motivational interview. Do you, either of you, ever do the motivational interview later on in someone's tenure with you? Let's say we've got somebody with us 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, 10 years later. Do you bring the motivational interview back around, and how do you use it in coaching or guiding that person?
For me, I have done that with agents on my team. I'll review the questions because either as they're not meeting the standards of the team, or they want more and they want a faster growth process, I think those questions become more relevant reviewing them because something might have changed while they're with you, and maybe you need to give them more or pull back less. I think the most important thing you said, and especially as a rainmaker, we think we need to have our hands on everything, is to make sure that whatever position you're hiring, you let them own that position and do their job. Because if you're always involved, and I can speak from experience, you're gonna get it back.
You're gonna get it back, right? Like you will be solving that person's problems forever if they're not clear on that. Yeah.
And you will be doing all the jobs, so.
Yeah, that's not the kind of leverage we want. I don't want to leverage
No.
you just to do these activities. I want to leverage you to get rid of the whole role, right?
Right.
That's my goal.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's such an important thing to do. I personally have not done it as much as I probably should. My GM, he does it quite a bit, and it's been fascinating to watch. And that happens when, if you know, in our case, we've hired young leadership, both young in age as well as young in experience in this type of role. And when there's growth opportunities there, sometimes we assume that everyone wants this opportunity to move up, move up, move up. And when we assume that and we don't go back to this and they don't want to do that, it shows up as stress. And so then you go back, you know, or the flip side, what we've learned and what this has helped with is you also have a bit of a culture of where, you know, people assume that the next step that they have to take is to grow and take leadership roles. And some people, that's not what they want to do. They want to thrive at an incredibly high level where they are. And so being able to revisit that when they keep pushing themselves, right? Because they're surrounded by, I mean, that's the beauty of being with KW is it's opportunity, opportunity, opportunity. And the stressful thing for with KW is it's opportunity, opportunity, opportunity. And people are like, okay, this is what I have to do. Going back to the motivational interview definitely helps them kind of recenter themselves as well.
Well, I think, people grow inside of our organizations, right? Like the person we hired is not necessarily the same person that works for us 12 and 18 months later, especially if we were actually doing our job as a leader and growing that person and developing them and raising their financial lid, right? Like I think one of the interesting things is, when we look at especially financial lids on people who come to us from outside of the Keller ecosystem, especially if they've been in a strict corporate background, anything like that, and they're coming into our world, their financial lid might not necessarily be very high. And there's nothing wrong with that. But in our ecosystems, we talk a lot about money. Money drives our businesses, right? Revenue. Like we're very much in that conversation, and we've got a lot of resources to help people on that. But what their financial lid was the day we interviewed them to be our EA or our brand new buyer's agent, and what their financial lid is after 12 to 18 months of exposure to us and this ecosystem and everybody else in the business, right? Like it slowly could raise. But if we as the leader don't go back to that motivational interview every 12 to 18 months and actually look at that to learn that, hey, while my buyer's agent that I love said originally they wanted to make $85,000 a year and they were super happy with that, they've now got a hunger for $150,000 a year. Well, if I don't know that, I can't help them and change their activities and help them adjust what they're doing to reach that goal. But if I know that, I can make really small tweaks and changes in our coaching and help them get to that goal so they accomplish their goals. And if anybody's ever heard me talk, you've heard me say the only reason any two people are in business together is they believe that by doing such, they'll achieve their goal quicker and easier. And when we look at the motivational interview, people's goals change over time. And if we don't actually know their goals, that's what motivation is. It's not just about how many units you want to hit. It's what are the goals that hitting that provides for me. If we don't know that, then how can I help them achieve their goal quicker and easier in my organization? I actually become counterproductive to them achieving their goal if I don't know what it is. Like I'm a firm believer in every 12 to 18 months that we have motivational interview conversations with them.
I think especially too for a buyer agent position, if you don't have that conversation or you're not aware of the growth that they want in salary, you run the risk at that point of 12 or 18 months that they think their only answer is to leave the team and go out on their own and they'll make more money.
Yep.
That happens quite often.
Yeah, happens all the time.
Such a good point.
Yeah, it's painful when it happens too. And you're like, well, why did you leave? Why didn't you just tell me? Well, while we would love them to tell us, I don't know if any of you have met yourselves, we're not exactly the easiest people necessarily to pin down or approach or have a hard conversation with unless we've curated an environment for that. Rainmakers by nature, we're a little sandpapery, we're a little rough, we're a little fast moving. And so it can be tough for someone to have that conversation, to Margaret's point.
I think too, when you go over your own personality traits as your team grows, or if you've had a bad experience, you have to revisit that yourself. Because I learned that, like, I started KW Talent 2 months now. I'm going to the very beginning, and it's the foundation.
It's understanding ourselves and others as foundation, pillar one and foundation. Yep.
Lots of us have. You realize how tough you can be because we're progressing or bearing more stress over a long period of term. And for somebody that just comes into our team, they might be like, what the heck?
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you, when we do retreats with teams and we go on site with them and we work with teams intimately, no matter what, no matter how big that team is, no matter how good that team is, we start with foundation of understanding ourselves and others, and we bring out everybody's KPA. And everybody always questions us on it. They're like, well, we've done career visioning. We know each other's KPAs. We use them. I'm like, talk to me in 2 hours after we go through this part. Like, we're living in this because we have to in order to do the rest. And every time, like, even the teams that are like, no, we got it, it's good, they're just mind blown. They're like, oh my God, so many things make so much more sense now, because now they understand themselves and others at such a higher level. And there's a reason that's pillar one in foundation, is because if we have cracks in that, like, we're certainly not going to get the rest of it. And the motivational interview, we have to understand who people are, right? To know where to ask those questions. All right, so we're down to our last couple of minutes. So first, I want to thank Margaret and Joseph and all of you for being here today. Lastly, I want to ask the two panelists here today, if you could leave our viewers today, who've spent the last 30 minutes with us on their Thursday morning, one word of wisdom, one nugget, right? Like one key thing you want them to take away from today, whether that be about the motivational interview or any other part of hiring and developing people. What would that nugget be? Margaret, I want to start with you. What would that nugget be you want to leave with everybody?
For me, there's two things. One is to follow the process. Don't assume that you know and you can skip this part, because I've been there and have done that wrong. And the other thing is don't think that you've grown so much that you don't have to go back and revisit the basics, because believe it or not, you've changed. And when you said about bringing the KPA, I know I see it in my office. You'll say somebody, oh, did you look at your KPA? They can't even find it. So you have to review it, because you are changing as you develop other people.
Absolutely. Joseph, mic drop.
Yeah, I don't know that I could have said it much better. Honestly, trust the process. Plan for and trust the process, right? If you're acting out of urgency and you're trying to rush through it, it will come back to bite you. So trust the process in this, particularly with the motivational interview. Ask the questions and sit with the silence.
Perfect. And here's mine for everybody. Confidence is just the experience of success felt over and over again. So if you're really uncomfortable with the motivational interview, you'll get better and you'll feel more confident the more you do it. There is no other way to gain that confidence. Confidence is just the experience of success felt over and over again. So if you're not comfortable with it, the answer is to do it more. Find a peer, find a buddy, find a team member, find a KW Talent member to work with, interview a ton of people and put them through motivational interview. Just do it more. That's where you'll get the confidence. The more confidence you have, the more you'll find that you actually use it as a valuable tool in your business, and that will lead to great changes and great things for you. So thank you, everybody. Margaret, Joseph in particular. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. We are going to wrap for the morning, and we will see you all on our next CV and Caffeine. Have a good day.